everybody, it's me, Laura, and I'm back today, and we're going to be doing some Nautilus jewelry. I'm going to do a pendant and a set of earrings to go with it, and we're going to kind of incorporate a little bit of everything in this particular set of jewelry. Right away, I'm bringing in a Skinner blend. It's going to be of my light green, which I think is a wasabi from Primo, a light green, excuse me, a medium blue, a magenta, and a yellow. And I'm going to create a really nice blend out of all four of these colors. I did something similar in a prior video. I think it's the staggered bullseye cane jewelry. If you want to go back, you could refer to something very similar there. But the difference here is I'm folding up all four of them. Once I get that nice blend, I'll fold it up 4 times. I'll feed it through on the yellow end and lengthen this entire piece of clay out on a number 1 setting using my Atlas pasta machine. Once I get that lengthened out, I'll lengthen it once more on a number 4 setting to kind of thin this out, and I want to get as much of that blend elongated as possible. Once I get that whole nice big long piece elongated out, and it might be a little bit tricky in making sure that the clay doesn't stick to one another as you're feeding it through the pasta machine. So if you need to do it slowly, do it slowly. Me, I just go like a crazy wildfire. It's like, keep going. But anyway, right here I'm going to roll it up with the yellow in the center and get that entire blend rolled up. Once I have that, I'm going to take the ends, because I didn't roll out, this particular Skinner blend cane really well where I had just nice even ends. I'm going to cut off those ends, and then I'll place one of the ends right into the other side where I've got a little bit of a gap, and this will give me a nice, wonderful Skinner blend of color. Once I have that together, then I'll then come in and I'm going to bring in my black clay, and I'll bring in my white clay. And I show here with the black, I rolled that out on a number 1 setting with my Atlas pasta machine, come in with the white, I wrap it in white, and then I do believe I wrapped it twice in white on that same setting, and then bring in the black and wrap it once more. So it's really just creating a bullseye of what I like here, right? If you want to try a different bullseye, do so. You don't necessarily have to follow along on the colors I've got here. If you're like, you know what, I want to try something else, maybe a purple with a yellow or whatever with the green, go for it. I just go for it. And you'll notice there the white in there, okay? I had the Skinner blend. I didn't do the black. I just went with the white. The white was wrapped twice off of my number 1 setting using the Atlas pasta machine. So you can really change up your bullseyes here. You don't necessarily have to go with what I have here. Mess around with it. See what you like best, okay? But create a really nice bullseye that you can enjoy. I want to say in the end, when I got this thing all together, I had close to 2.5 inches in width on the diameter of this cane. I threw in a little silver on some of this as well when it came to my bullseye canes. Just experiment, have some fun, see what you like best. Once you have that together though, your bullseye, you're going to reduce this thing down, and I want to say I get it down to about 1 inch or even a 1/2 inch. Maybe not a 1/2 inch, but I mean, that might be a little small. I prefer like 1 inch and under, but I like to go around 1 inch, because if I go at that inch, I'll cut it into sections, and I do show how to do that in this little section here. I cut it into sections, like into 3 or 4 lengths, and each length is about 1 inch long. Okay, I don't want to go too much, taller than that, because it's harder to deal with and it's harder to, I'm like, no. Besides, if I have those lengths, I can then take each one of those and reduce them down to whatever I feel I need to have. So it's just like extra clay to have sitting on the side, that if you need that particular length of that bullseye, you can have that on hand, and you don't have to remake it all over again. That's kind of part of this too. When I go and make my bullseyes, I try not to have to make it all the time, over and over. And I mean, the monotony, yeah, it just, no. Not something I really want in my life, right? So anyway, I'm bringing in here a little bit of a blue and a yellow. We're doing a Skinner blend. Again, I'm going to lengthen this out from my number 1 to a number 4, going back over, and this time we're going to fan fold this particular Skinner blend. And I'm going to get a nice fan folded piece. I want to say when I fan folded this, I like to have them about at least a good 1/2 inch wide if possible. If you want to go a little bit, shorter, when it comes to width, go ahead and do so. It's truly up to you. That's just kind of my standard of thumb. I like to kind of have about a 1/2 inch. Sometimes I'll go like with a 1/4, but that seems really tiny. And then you get really tall. Unless you want it really tall. So anyways, I'm doing my fan fold here, and you can tell on the one side, I'm going to have a really wonky side. I'm going to eventually cut that particular side off because I don't need that extra wonk. Wonk? Oh my goodness. Anyway, making up words today. Sorry, please forgive me. Anyway, I'll cut off that extra end because that's not going to help me at all. If I had an uneven area on the other side and I really don't, you just need to cut off that extra piece. So from here, I then kind of flatten it out on all 4 sides. I get it nice and flattened out, and then make sure I have it also flattened on the ends as much as possible. If you can, trim it up if you need to. And then bring in your black clay, which has been rolled out on a number 2 setting on my Atlas pasta machine. Wrap this entire Skinner blend cane up, and then take another color, like maybe a silver or some other color, create a couple of registration lines on the yellow side and one on the blue side, place those down, and then start rolling this out, start reducing it down and rolling it out, and then you're going to flatten it, cut the length into 4 different segments, and then place them all together, and you'll be forming that segmented petal cane. Now, I won't be showing you guys how to do the segmented petal cane here, but I'll put a link to that video in the description area, so if you want to see it, you can. Okay, so we're going to start forming our main Nautilus pendant, and right here I have a bit of my mud clay, and this thing is about 2 centimeters, which winds up being 3/4 of an inch for me. So I'm taking then my black clay here, and this has been rolled out on a number 4 setting, or even a 5 if you really want to go ahead and do that, you could. And I'm wrapping that mud clay in my black. Now, I should have done this with all of my mud clay. A part of it was, I was thinking, well, do I paint or do I not paint? Do I, don't I? I don't know. So, in the end, it was a little bit of a mix. So part of my mud clay was not wrapped in black, and then parts like this were. Now anyways, I'm turning this into a nice long teardrop, and when I do, I'm going to bring in my canes. There you can see I got my segmented petal canes. I did that blue and yellow, and I got my bullseye canes. And this thing, the bullseye cane was a little bit too big. So I'm going to reduce it down some more until I get it to the point where I really like the look of it, and I can go ahead and use it on that teardrop. So right here, I'm going to go ahead, cut it once more. I like to have little extra parts on the side, right? And then reduce down another segment of it. So this way then I've got one at the original size, because you can't go backwards. You can only go forwards when it comes to reducing. So cutting a couple of these slices, we're going to start placing them down on the top of this teardrop. Now I liked that, and I thought, okay, now I need some smaller ones, and that's what these guys are here. And I'm just going to make that it almost looks like a tiny little, you might say, flower on the top of this long teardrop. And it's not, but it kind of gives that effect in my mind. Anyway, I'm going to bring in one of those segmented cane pieces. I'm going to place that down there, bring in another bullseye, and repeat my pattern all the way down the length of this teardrop. Now, once I get this particular length all covered up with my cane all the way down the line, I'm going to bring in, and notice there at the very end, I put 3 instead of adding in the segmented petal cane. I just put 3 bullseyes. You can change it up if you want to a little bit. I'm bringing in some mud clay here, though, and the thing is, the mud clay wound up being about, it was like just under a 1/2 of an inch in diameter, but I'm measuring it, I'm looking at, do I like the look of that size? If you don't, take a little less out. You don't have to go strictly with my measurements, but if you want to, you can. Anyways, yeah, it's just under a 1/2 inch, and then it's about 1 centimeter on the other side. I'm then going to wrap this again with my black clay on a number 4 setting with my Atlas pasta machine. I'm going to cut it out with my small scissors and then roll it around so I get a nice consistent look of that black all the way around the piece. I'm going to plop that down right in the center where I've got the little curvature going on. And then once I have that, I'm going to bring in my ball tools. Now, I was like, okay, which one? Let's go with the little bit smaller, but yeah, right there. That looked about right to me. I thought, yeah, let's go with the second, yeah, smaller. No, no, no. Go with the second largest ball tool and create that indent into that ball. Now, this particular teardrop, this was actually 3/4 of an inch in diameter and 2 centimeters in diameter if you go the other way. And right here, I'm bringing in that same bullseye I had created or another bullseye. Notice I had a lot of white in this particular bullseye. When it came to the white layers, I had layered that twice on a number 1 setting. So I wanted to make sure I had a nice white section between each of my darker components, and it worked out great because it really set itself apart from everything else. Now, as I was forming this, I took a slice, formed it right over my teardrop. Teardrop wound up being about 3 inches, and I thought, just lap it, just overlap it just slightly and do it all the way down that particular teardrop. And then once you have that teardrop completely done up with all of these pieces from your bullseye cane, you're going to take that thing and you're going to wrap this around on your Nautilus. And here's what I did. I placed it down and I thought, okay, well, this will probably work out good, right? Well, guess what? It was too short, okay? It was just too short for me. So I started to roll this thing. Now, because those pieces from my bullseye cane were already in place, it just elongated it out. And I was like, no, it's still not long enough. So if you run into this problem, yeah, go ahead and roll it a few times and then just place it back down until you get it to where you really like it the best. Now that I have that outer teardrop put down, I brought in some of my black clay and I rolled this out on a number 4 setting. And I thought, I'm just going to take a couple of strips and I want to wrap them, you might say, around some of where the cane was placed down when it came to these teardrop pieces, and just place them in and have some fun with this. They're a little bit of me. I think my head is still kind of in my steampunk. So I'm like still in this whole thing. Oh, let's just go ahead and put a section of black clay right around this little area or that little area. And I almost did it. I was almost thinking, oh, let's add in a buckle. Let's add in some stitching. And I almost did. And if you want to try that, I recommend trying it because I think it would be really cool. I mean, I didn't do it here, but you guys, maybe an idea to just pop that in and try it out. Anyway, from here, I brought in some more of my mud clay. And this is where I was like, okay, do I wrap it, not wrap it? And I didn't. I just thought, let's use the mud clay. Let's place it down. If I have to, I'll bring in my paints later and just paint it up. So really from here, other than creating my little hook with my eye pin, and with the hook on the eye pin, what I did was I decided to sink it into, because this is fairly thick clay, I had at least a good 1/4 inch, so I had to really bake this thing quite a bit. I went about 15 minutes easily just to make sure I had a nice bake all the way through. For you guys though, because, and check where you live, it might be longer than what I'm doing. More than likely it probably is. But, go ahead and bake it thoroughly. But when I put that hook into the clay, this way then I didn't have to worry about using liquid clay to help make sure it was sealed in correctly. I just sunk it into the clay and then pushed the clay kind of back into place so that it would seal up naturally. So from here, guys, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to let you watch my hands talk as I complete up creating my Nautilus pendant. All right, so now we're going to start creating the earrings to go with our pendant piece. And I want to say each of these balls are about 1/2 of an inch in diameter and about 1 centimeter in diameter for those of you who love metric. Anyway, I'm bringing in my black clay and I'm going to wrap the black, which has been rolled out on a number 4 setting, using my Atlas pasta machine, and I'm going to wrap that around, and then I'm just going to cut off the excess, and eventually I'll just roll that into a nice ball. So this way then, and you guys are wondering, well, why does she always do the black? Part of this is to preserve, or I want to say keep, as much of my black clay around as possible. I run out of black clay and white pretty fast, and I think most people do. So I try to use it sparingly, and in some cases where it's like I don't need a full big wad of black clay, if I can use mud, that's what I'll do. So anyways, from there, I'm going to take both of those balls, I'm going to make them into teardrops. And as you can tell here, so it's about a little over or I should say 1/2 of an inch in diameter, and then 1.5 centimeters when it comes to that black clay I added in. And then I'm just creating these into equal length type teardrops. Then once I have those done, I'm going to bring my bullseyes back in and the little segmented petal canes. And you could tell there with the bullseyes, I had just made them into teardrop forms. I'm going to take each of those and we're going to create a pattern using the teardrops and the segmented cane. I want to say I used the pink and the blue a little bit more this time around. I thought, yeah, I like that particular one. So just changing it up just slightly, and we're going to do every other one a segment and then a bullseye and so on, and we'll have that go all the way down each length. And then once I have that done, I'll then start to curl these up and they will form, you might say, when I placed them on my tile plate, I had them form up into a little bit of a heart form. This way I could then see that each little teardrop was not, one was not larger than the other. And if I curled them up, they would then not have to be pointed in the same direction, but rather they could mirror each other and have either both earrings pointing away from each other or towards each other. For me, this is more interesting. I like my earrings a little bit more interesting like that. Anyway, once I got the curls in there and I really liked how it was, I could have left it like this, but you know me, I got to add that small little ball of clay. So I brought in some of my black clay, and it wound up being where each ball was just under 1/2 of an inch in diameter and wound up being like 1 inch, or I should say 1 centimeter in metric. At this point, I'm bringing in a few more balls made from my mud or scrap clay. I'm going to create tiny little snakes, and I'm going to add those into my earrings. But right now, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to let you guys just watch my hands talk as I complete up creating my Nautilus earrings. All right, so this is where the dilemma of do I wrap my mud clay in black clay or leave it just plain kind of come back to me like, okay, what did you do? So yes, I did have to go in on some of the mud clay and paint it with my black matte acrylic paint. But you know, I look back on that, and the reason why I didn't do it on all the pieces was because the the teardrops that had the cane work on them, I knew those were going to be black, right? And for some of you, you're going to be like, I don't want to necessarily varnish over that particular area. You might want to just let that shine, and that's kind of what I did. I wanted the clay itself to just come through more than have my painting just take over entirely. And I was glad I did it that way. Now, I am going to be bringing in my Colorshift paint, so I'm using my green flash, purple, aqua, and blue flash. So those are the main color shifts that I'm going to be using. And the aqua, I think I only used it on one part of this particular piece. And part of it was because sometimes with those color shifts, it takes a number of coatings for that thing to really look correctly. And that's kind of what happened like right in here, because I do believe that I used the blue flash on that centerpiece going around that I'm doing right now. But you could have also used the, I want to say the purple flash as well, because I was showing more purple. However, the more I painted it over, the blue kind of came through. So you got to keep that in mind with those color shift paints, because you're probably going to have more of a coat just to make sure that that shift kind of look does show up in the piece itself. I also then used my Folk Art Metallic Turquoise Shimmer. And the reason why I did that, I wanted to play with the turquoise a little bit more. I mean, this is a Nautilus, right? So you're thinking ocean. So that means colors of the ocean. So you're thinking your turquoises, your blues, some of your purples maybe, you know, and having that, you know, those blues from the ocean, if you will. Now, I really want to comment here on using my metallic paints against the cane work in this particular piece and in the earrings. I really liked the combination for some reason, and I think a lot of it is because my cane work is very, how do I put this? It's kind of plain, okay? You're dealing with standard colors, has a certain look, and when you're placing it down, it's like, yeah, okay, that's the bullseye cane, that's whatever that you're using there. And then when you come in with the metallic paints, it's just like, oh! I'm sorry, that's what I always do when I come down the hill and see my mountains. I'm like, oh! But that's how I feel when it came to this particular piece too, because that metallic really pops out away from the cane work, and you really can tell the difference in it, and it gives a nice, just a really fun, different kind of look to this set of jewelry. Okay, so at this point I had to bring in my white paint and I had to create that eyeball, and it was right in the center of the Nautilus. Now I know if you go and look up pictures of a Nautilus, the eyeball is actually closer down towards the very end part of I don't know how to put it. It's not in the center. Let's just put it that way. It's not in the center. So this is a little bit of a Laura taking a make-believe look at what a Nautilus might be for me. So I'm coloring in, or I should say I'm painting in with that white. I'm then going to come in with my black, create my little black dot center for my eyeball, and then come back in after this is dried and do one little tiny dot of white to give myself that life kind of look to our Nautilus. Now, if you thought I was going to get away from my Posca, yeah, no. No. You know, I love this, what is it, 0.7 millimeter Posca paint pen. I love this thing because, look at this. I get these tiny little dots, and it's no muss, no fuss, and it creates a great detail onto my Nautilus piece. So keep that in mind also. Like if you want to go ahead, I mean, yes, you could go ahead and use a tiny, you know, 10-aught brush if you want and use your white paint, but I like my Posca. I'm going to play with it when I can. And then I brought in some of my pointed back rhinestones. I'm going to place that into my Nautilus, bring in my water-based varnish and varnish up the painted areas on this Nautilus, and then finish it up with this jump ring and chain. Okay, so on the earrings, I decided to go ahead and use more of that blue flash on that center, and then I went ahead and painted in, of course, my eyeball right in the center. I also then decided to use that turquoise shimmer. I wanted to use that on the outside piece there, that's the mud clay. I didn't use the aqua. I thought, no, I'm going to stay away from that. I want to keep some of that turquoise shimmer in there because it really did tie in more to the original, I want to say, necklace pendant piece. So that's where I went with that. But from here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let you guys watch my hands talk as I complete up the earring set to our Nautilus. All right, so this is the end result of creating my Nautilus jewelry in polymer clay. Please use this for study and reference. And if you like this video, please bop the like button, and subscribe, and leave me a comment. I'm always wondering what you're thinking. Otherwise, I am sending out my biggest hugs to each of you, and I hope you have a fantastic day.